In the heart of the Nevada desert, silence is never empty. October 1996. The wind blows low, carrying grains of sand and fragments of conversations that dissolve into the dark. The night is cold and blue, stretched out under a limitless sky, and a bluish light pulses distant on the horizon, tearing through the darkness like a secret about to be revealed. On the edge of that luminosity, a group of people gathers around a freshly opened crater. The ground still steams, the air vibrates as if charged with electricity, and the faces, some frightened, others merely curious, turn in the same direction. A few meters away, a skinny girl advances, her steps uncertain, her clothes covered in dust. Lena Miller, 12 years old, missing for 3 days. Gazes cross, a nervous murmur grows. It's her! The onlookers step back, making space as Lena approaches the crater. The heat from the soil rises to her bare feet, and in the air, something invisible seems to watch back. Without warning, a luminous form rises from the center of the impact. It has no face, no defined shape, but it glows and pulses, now blue, now silver, as if trying to decide between existing and vanishing. The tension is almost unbearable. Fear hovers over the group, but Lena doesn't retreat. Shouts urge her to stay back, but she doesn't obey. She takes another step forward, her whole body vibrating between courage and a strange recognition, as if she had already seen that light in dreams. Time hesitates. Sound fades. Lena slowly raises her hand, crossing the distance between her and the creature. Upon touching the dense, illuminated air, the light transforms, swirling in tones that evoke ancient memories. A wave of heat and sadness spreads, and for a moment, everything seems possible. The connection, the understanding, the silent miracle. No one can explain what happens in that instant. From that contact, something invisible, but as real as the desert itself, is born. A bridge between two exiles, one human and one being from another world. What appeared that night in the desert was not an invader. It was someone who remembered what humans had forgotten to be. Hours before the flash, the desert was already whispering its secrets. Lena walked alone, her old backpack swinging on her back, her shoes forgotten somewhere along the road, and her diary clutched tightly in her arms. The fight with her mother, so banal as a cloudy sky on a moonless night, had transformed in her mind into an unbearable weight. Escape or search, perhaps just an unconscious desire to disappear, to dissolve into something greater than any domestic pain. The desert that night seemed alive. It wasn't just the absence of houses, poles, or human voices. It was a presence, silent, immense, capable of swallowing thoughts and returning only empty echoes. For Lena, each step was a dive into another universe. The ground crunched under her feet. The stones held the day's heat and released it back in waves that seemed to breathe. The cloudless sky seemed to gaze back. A sea of stars watched every movement, indifferent, yet also protective. The city ended abruptly, almost as if the civilized world was ashamed to extend beyond the last illuminated street. From there on, only sand, dried shrubs, and a horizon lost in shadows. Lena pressed on, driven by something beyond fear. There was an emptiness in her eyes that didn't come from solitude, but from a more ancient absence, something she didn't even know how to name. With each minute, the silence thickened, but it wasn't total. There were vibrations, small pulsations from the ground, as if the desert itself had a hidden heart. Lena stopped, closed her eyes, and felt. The ground breathed beneath her feet, subtly, almost imperceptibly. Was it a call, a threat, perhaps just the illusion of someone too tired to distinguish reality from fantasy? She followed toward what she judged to be the source of that warmth. Further ahead, something gleamed among the bushes. A metallic structure, partially buried, like an ancient scar exposed by the sand. Lena approached, her body light with fear and curiosity. The metal reflected the blue light of the sky, but pulsed on its own, as if alive, vibrating at a frequency adults had forgotten to perceive. Inside that structure, the air was different, dense, charged with a strange energy, heavy and ethereal at the same time. Lena knelt, touched the soil with her palm, and an unusual heat rose up her arm, reaching her chest. For an instant, she felt as if the entire earth had a heart, beating slowly, waiting for someone capable of hearing it. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was no sadness, only the sensation that the universe was much larger, and in some way, much closer than anything her limited life up to then had allowed her to believe. That's when she heard, for the first time, the sound coming from deep within the earth. It wasn't a voice, nor music, nor wind. It was a deep, grave vibration that made her chest vibrate as if an ancient secret was about to emerge. Fear and curiosity danced within her as she slowly stood, her eyes fixed on the light that now grew, changing color every second. In the desert silence, Lena felt part of something ineffable. The emptiness around her ceased to be a threat and became a mirror of human emptiness itself, the absence of meaning, the ancient longing for belonging. There, where no one else could see, Lena and the desert breathed together, preparing for the encounter that would change everything. The clarity increased, slow and hypnotic, as if every atom of the air bowed before something about to emerge. Lena remained still, feeling her heart beat unevenly, her body torn between the instinct to flee and an uncontrollable attraction. From the center of the metallic structure, a form began to take shape, blurred, translucent, defying any description the human mind could conceive. It wasn't a movie E.T., nothing of black eyes or elongated limbs. It was fragmented, oscillating between flesh, light, and absence, a being born from the threshold between matter and energy. The being's presence filled the entire space, the air becoming denser, almost liquid around it. Lena watched it with a mix of fascination and compassion, unable to feel genuine fear. On the contrary, it was as if an ancient memory was activated in her soul, a sensation of impossible recognition. The being seemed to struggle to exist there, each movement hesitant, as if breathing were a challenge. Its form trembled, the light pulsed in sync with a faint and irregular beat. For an instant, Lena's eyes filled with tears. The visitor's suffering was almost palpable, emanating from the creature like an invisible wave. She knelt, approaching slowly, feeling the intense heat radiating from it. No words were spoken, but the communication was silent, profound, crossing the air like a whisper from the universe itself. When the creature tried to pull away, it stumbled in its own fragility and collapsed. Lena, driven by pure instinct, extended her hand, touching the ground near the being. The earth vibrated, and a current of energy ran up her arm. Her eyes met for a brief second, what seemed to be the creature's core, a blue flame pulsing, oscillating between existing and fading. Amid the charged silence, Lena whispered, her voice trembling, almost childlike. "You're hurt, aren't you?" There was no verbal response. Instead, the air trembled, emitting a deep, grave sound that reverberated in her chest. A cosmic groan, impossible to translate. But in that moment, something between the two changed. Pain and exile became mirrors, connecting the alien and the girl in a silent understanding, older than any language. It wasn't an encounter of invasion or salvation. They were two exiles, two beings displaced from their own worlds, recognizing in the other a solitude that only those who have been forgotten can understand. Lena felt the being's energy merge, for an instant, with her own. The boundaries between human and extraterrestrial seemed dissolved. Before the atmosphere dissipated, Lena noticed the blue light weakening. She approached even closer, resting her hand on the vibrating metallic structure. A deep empathy took hold of her, a desire to protect, to heal, to not let that presence fade alone. It was impossible to know how much time passed in that state. The silence seemed eternal, but it was laden with promises and questions. Deep down, Lena knew the bond created there would never be broken. Before we continue, if this video is being useful to you, take a moment to subscribe, leave your like, and comment what you would do in a situation like this. As she closed her eyes, Lena felt a wave of heat traverse her entire body. There was no longer any distance between them. Something invisible, but indestructible, united their destinies. The being, even wounded, tried to raise its head, as if wanting to memorize the girl's face. In that gaze, there was no threat, only the silent certainty that an impossible bond had been formed there, in the heart of the desert. The night seemed to have dissolved, taking with it the ground, the stones, and even the desert air. Lena no longer felt her own body. She floated in a vastness of liquid light, where everything was different. There was no sky, no earth, only a living clarity that pulsed to the rhythm of thoughts that were not just hers. There, before her, the being revealed itself in another form, less fragmented, almost whole, with features oscillating between the known and the impossible. She tried to speak, but the words came out disjointed as if made of wind. The contact no longer happened through voice, but through images, sensations, fragments of memories that invaded Lena's mind without permission. She saw flashes of a distant civilization, cities rising under blue suns, beings made of energy dancing in harmony before everything crumbled. The war wasn't against humans, but between entities of pure light, a silent, almost poetic battle that ended in exile and silence. The being showed her, without choice, its fall, the moment it decided to interfere in a forbidden project, something linked to humanity, jumbled images of men and women walking in circles, eyes dimmed, hearts heavy. They hurt themselves. They forgot. They faded, the sequence of images said, more felt than heard. Lena felt the weight of that dead planet's emptiness, felt the echo of solitude from someone condemned not for what they did, but for caring too much. She wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt compassion, a genuine desire to embrace that emptiness and fill it, as if she could return color to a forgotten universe, memories intertwined. The being saw Lena's simple childhood, the messy room, the quiet afternoons, the solitude that always accompanied her even among people. And she, for an instant, was traversed by memories of golden seas and nights so vast that only one who had once been immortal could comprehend. The connection grew in intensity. The environment vibrated as if made of light and emotion, and the barrier between human and alien seemed to evaporate. The being tried to break the contact, fearing to lose the little of itself that remained, but it couldn't. Something in it, dormant for centuries, awakened slowly. Lena's purity, her raw and sincere humanity, reignited a feeling it thought it had lost forever. At that threshold, the impossible happened. The millennia-old consciousness of the visitor, marked by centuries of exile, found refuge in a fragile but whole girl. And for the first time since falling to Earth, the being understood that there was still something in the universe worth protecting. In the silence of that encounter, the distances between worlds dissolved. Hope, forgotten, became possible again. From outside that parallel universe, reality pulsed back brutally. Helicopters sliced through the night sky, their lights sweeping the landscape with white, relentless circles. The sound of rotors mixed with alarms and hurried voices from military radios echoing through the valley. Residents of a nearby small town were already murmuring, frightened, about a UFO that fell from the sky. Human fear grew, claiming the night for itself. Inside the ship, or perhaps the body of the being itself, Lena felt a growing pressure. The visitor tried to stand, but the effort seemed to tear pieces of light from its essence. Guilt pierced it. Memories of destruction in other worlds, recollections of bitter choices, the decision to intervene when it should have only observed. It faltered, but didn't avert its gaze from Lena. She, serene, remained firm before its pain, without turning away her face or lowering her head. With a soft but firm voice, "Like rock," Lena pronounced, "you don't need to run anymore." For a moment, the phrase hung in the air, laden with meanings far beyond the words. It was an invitation, a surrender, a silent promise that, even in the face of fear, escape was no longer necessary. The being hesitated, absorbing the courage contained in that phrase. But outside, the tension reached its limit. The first shot pierced the metallic shell of the ship, a blast that made the ground tremble. In that instant, Lena was enveloped by a wave of golden light, intense and warm, as if dawn itself had come early to the desert. The alien launched itself in front of her, allowing part of its body to dissipate in the burst of energy, shielding the girl from the impact. It was an instinctive sacrifice, the protection of someone who had nothing left to lose, but who, in that moment, decided that Lena's existence was worth more than any cosmic law. The being's consciousness fully awakened. Within it, an ancient power broke the chains of exile, taking control of the ship, of its own destiny. The desert suddenly became the stage for an impossible spectacle. The sands glowed, the shadows dissipated, and for a few seconds, it seemed the sun had risen ahead of time. Those watching from afar swore the night split in two, and, in that brief flash, fear and wonder mingled, forever challenging what men understood as impossible. Lena awoke once more, but the world around her was pure abstraction. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor, only vastness. Colors moved like waves of liquid light. Constellations floated in the void, thoughts intertwined with space. There, everything was symbolic. Memories appeared as slowly rotating galaxies. Emotions became storms of glow and shadow. She realized, without understanding how, that she was inside the alien's mind. It wasn't a physical place, but a shared field of consciousness, where the laws of the universe seemed left outside. There, everything was true, even what never existed. Lena felt the past and present mixing. She saw, through the being's eyes, the silent tribunal that condemned it, the pain of exile, the emptiness of centuries without real connection. Images paraded before her, humans rescued in other times, the breaking of an ancestral rule known as the Code of Isolation, a law that forbade any direct contact with human civilizations. For trying to save a small lost group, for feeling empathy when it should have only observed, it had been judged and banished, condemned to wander worlds, far from everything it loved. The flow of memories washed over her like a wave. Lena understood that the fall to Earth was no accident. The visitor had long sought a human heart, capable of reminding it of compassion, of rekindling the forgotten spark that still remained within. And, against all logic, it had found that in her. She felt a spontaneous impulse, as if, there, she could guide that being as ancient as the stars. It wasn't power nor authority, it was trust, pure and simple. With her mind, Lena asked, "Take us away from the fear." Her thoughts sounded like music in the void. For the first time in eons, the alien yielded, not out of obedience, but trust. Within it, everything transformed. Lena felt it was possible to pilot that consciousness, to show a new path, to dissolve centuries of exile in a single decision. The bond between the two grew stronger, more alive. What was once an abyss became a bridge. Lena and the visitor, together, broke the chains of isolation, not just its own, but of all solitude, capable of imprisoning any creature in any world. The light broke through the barriers of the impossible. The ship, once plunged in shadows and panic, pierced the energy field and ascended, tearing through the night like a silent comet. From afar, thousands of people watched the flash rise into the sky, some kneeling in awe, others in fear, believing they witnessed the end of the world. But there was no explosion, no apocalyptic roar. The scene was calm, beautiful, wrapped in an almost sacred silence, as if time had paused to witness that unique moment. Inside the ship, Lena felt her heart light, as if all pain had been washed away by a wave of understanding. The visitor, exhausted, guided its final movements with delicacy, almost in gratitude. They crossed the desert to an isolated plain, far from any threat, and there, under the sky still tinged with bluish light, it gently set her down on the ground. Lena fell to her knees, dazed but whole. As the alien bid farewell, it approached once more. Its outlines seemed to dissolve in the breeze, fragments of light detaching from its ethereal skin. It touched the girl's forehead with a gesture mixing blessing and promise, depositing there a small bluish stone, pulsing, alive, as strange as it was familiar. "You are the memory. I will return when they remember too." The voice, more felt than heard, traversed Lena's body like a wave of heat and peace. In one last flash, the being dissolved into particles of light, vanishing among the high clouds. Everything quieted. The night resumed its vastness. Lena, eyes brimming with tears, let her body fall back and gazed at the sky as if trying to memorize every star. Days later, she walked alone along a dirt road, barefoot, hair disheveled, the blue stone closed in her palm. It wasn't possible to explain what she had lived. When she was found by a truck driver, there was no longer fear, only silence and serenity. The newspapers named the episode the Sand Creek Encounter, but no one, besides Lena, knew what it truly meant. She never tried to justify herself. She guarded the secret with the same care as the stone, knowing, in some deep place, that certain truths can only be understood by those who have one day been touched by the inexplicable. Time passed as it does in the desert, without haste, without visible marks, only the certainty that everything changes, even when it seems still. Decades later, Lena lives in silence in a small inland town, far from spotlights, questions, and distorted versions of her story. Her hair is now light as dawn. Her eyes hold a distant glow from one who has seen the other side of the impossible. On a calm October morning, She accepts, for the first time, to participate in an interview for a documentary on American mysteries. The setting is simple: a room lit by soft clarity, a wooden table, the old blue stone resting before her. The interviewer hesitates, sensing he is before something greater than he can comprehend. Lena watches patiently as the cameras adjust focus. When she finally begins to speak, her voice is low but steady, like one carrying a secret too heavy to keep alone. It wasn't an abduction. It was an awakening. The interviewer tries in vain to draw sensational details from her, but Lena doesn't yield. She shows the blue stone, which still pulses timidly at the touch of her fingers. She explains, with an almost timeless serenity, that the being was more human than many humans I've known. It didn't come to conquer, nor to frighten. The true reason for the contact was another: to remind humanity what it itself had forgotten. Empathy, compassion, mirror. With delicacy, Lena faces the camera, eyes brimming, and ends the interview with the phrase that, in some way, echoes her entire existence. He didn't come to take. He came to return our reflection to us. Silence settles in the room. The interviewer, disconcerted, risks one last question. And after that night, what happened to you? Lena smiles faintly, gazes at the sky through the open window, and replies only, "Sometimes the stars still answer when I think of him." The desert, even after so many years, doesn't forget. The wind still traverses the Sand Creek dunes, carrying echoes of that encounter. And every October 14th, mysterious lights cut the horizon at exactly the same time it all happened. They are blue and golden points that dance in the sky, now hovering silently, now vanishing suddenly, as if only those who have seen can perceive them. Many have tried to record, film, prove, but the cameras, inexplicably, capture only shadows or distant glows, as if the phenomenon refused to be imprisoned in cold proofs. For most, they are just legends fed by long nights and fertile imagination. But for those who were present, the feeling is different. A deep peace, a silent certainty that something greater still watches that piece of world. Some residents say that on that day, the desert gains another scent, the sand shines differently, even the birds seem to respect an invisible boundary. The sound of the wind mixes from afar with the echo of an ancient voice, almost a song, whispering words no one understands, but which make the heart beat calmer. In the simple house where Lena now lives, the blue stone remains on the wooden table, pulsing softly under the sunset light. It is a constant reminder that there are things that don't explain, but change everything from within. The distant sound of something overhead cuts the sky from time to time, and on more serene nights, the old camera rests unplugged, while Lena contemplates the horizon in silence. The imaginary camera pulls away slowly, revealing the vast desert and the star-speckled sky. The whole world seems to hold its breath, as if awaiting, once again, the reunion between worlds. Perhaps the most important encounters of existence don't happen between distant worlds, but between souls capable of remembering what it means to feel. Lena wasn't the first, and certainly won't be the last. The universe, vast and silent, hides doors that only open for those who carry courage and emptiness in equal measure. Some stories change the course of human history. Others simply remind that despite all fear and doubt, there is still hope guarded in the heart of those who dare cross the impossible. In the desert solitude, under the same ancient sky, the blue stone pulses. Small, discreet, but alive, as if guarding the secret of the universe itself. Perhaps, somewhere beyond what eyes can reach, others await the same miracle, an improbable encounter capable of reigniting the compassion humanity stubbornly forgets. If this story touched you, leave your comments saying "I believe" and share this video. Maybe someone needs to remember that not every mystery comes to frighten, some come to awaken. The sound of the wind carries the silence of the night, while a solitary star shines high in the sky. Fade out.